AM, North Las Vegas, KXTE HD3 Perot.
what 2000 and is it 12 or 15 draft, whichever draft class is completely gone now, not even on the roster anymore. So the draft has been sketchy, but look at what he's done in free agency. So you have to take both sides of it. In free agency, he came into an absolute mess. He was able to clear up all of that dead money, get rid of the contracts that were just debilitating this team, and really fix what had been broken for a really long time. Al Davis was notorious for bringing in older veterans and paying them top dollar like they were going to perform kind of the way he did back in the 70s, but it's a different era. And Reggie was able to turn that around and fix it. This is, as far as cap space goes, the Raiders are now always towards the top of the list for available money. They seem to find, if not the best free agents out there, they're able to find pieces to plug holes. You look what he did on the offensive line just a few years ago, bringing in Kelechi Osemele, bringing in Rodney Hudson, Donald Penn. I mean, those are, until injuries popped up, those are three beasts on the offensive line, and that gives you that stability. So he's done a good job in certain aspects of the general manager position.
Right.
The draft is where it's been a little off, and that's unfortunately where everybody turns to. That's the big marquee thing as a GM is who did you get in the draft?
Yeah, and thanks for filling that time as you saw it. If you're watching on video, you saw me going behind Matt. We had a sound issue, so for those of you
he's doing laps. He's working out.
That's the thing. We are self-sufficient. I'm running the video stuff here from the console. So what ends up happening is if we had an audio problem. So thanks out there to Stacy Rossi actually on Facebook who was telling me, hey, you guys don't have audio. Thanks, Stacy. Appreciate that. So it's fixed. But yeah, I mean, no one's surprised by this, right? And I think that Reggie McKenzie, whether or not you like what he did and whether or not all his picks panned out or not, doesn't really matter. I think he did a good job of stabilizing that franchise when it needed it, as you mentioned in what you were saying. Because of after the death of Al Davis, and that's a tough thing because when you have a patriarch like that and then he's gone, it takes several years for the organization to find its identity and find its footing. And here you are 16 years later and you're still trying to find it. Okay. And which is fine. So I think he did a good job as well. And what he decides to do and where he decides to go, we'll see. But to me, there were misses, but at the same time, you didn't have stability there either. He had a coach, you had offensive systems, defensive systems. You're drafting players, Matt. You have to be able to draft people who fit the system, right?
Yeah.
And when you have 5 different systems in 4 years, even as a GM, that's a hard thing to deal with.
It is, but I mean, even more to that, when you look at some of the guys that they reached for, like let's go back to Obi Melifonwu, right?
Yep.
Yeah, freakish athletic ability. This kid was what 6'2", was running a low 4.40, could go sideline to sideline, but he came in a little banged up. He was known as a guy that doesn't have that kind of toughness to him. Didn't want to stick his head in there too often and bang, and they wasted a second-round pick on him.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there are too many project guys that they've reached for instead of going for, which you hear this term a lot, best available player.
Right.
They needed a defensive back, but either go with the best one available or find the best player available that's going to help you fill a different hole within the draft. And I think too often they didn't go that route. They went for, let's see if we can find the diamond in the rough here. And this is going to be our quote unquote Tom Brady. This guy that should have gone really high, but we found him really low. And I just don't think that strategy has worked out well.
No, and I think that the system and the organization are changing, obviously, with the move to Las Vegas and bringing Gruden in and the revenue that's going to be coming with the team to Las Vegas. That's all going to change things. So again, breaking news is from Jason Lockenfor from CBS Sports is that Reggie McKenzie will be leaving the organization. When, we don't know. It doesn't say it's imminent right now, but it's going to happen, it says. So
is he a lame duck now? I mean, why stay around at this point?
No, I agree. We're going to step aside here and pay some bills. When we come back, we're going to be joined by Vinny Bonsignore of the Athletic Los Angeles. We're going to discuss running backs in the NFL and what the Raiders might do. You're listening to Silver and Black Today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
In life, just like in football, you need good hands to score. The Michael Westra Allstate Agency will carry you to success for
The Eagles take on the Cowboys. Later today at 1:15 on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
Hey, this is Tim Brown, Hall of Famer. You're listening to Silver and Black Today.
Go Irish, Tim Brown. Great Oakland Raider.
Last fighting Irish to win the Heisman.
Yes.
It was back in, 88?
And yesterday, with Murray's win of the Heisman Trophy, Matt, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, and who's the third? That's got 7? No. Ohio State. They have all 3 of those have 7 Heisman Trophy winners. So
I'm always happy when Alabama doesn't win something. So
yes.
Sorry, Tua.
I like Tua. I think he'll win it next year anyway. But we'll see if he doesn't come
starts.
out. Yeah, well, if he does, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But
they didn't need him in the championship game, apparently.
No, he didn't. But we are, as always, in this segment, joined by our good friend and NFL beat writer and NFL insider, Vinny Bonsignore from The Athletic Los Angeles. Vinny's coming to us from the very warm and balmy Chicago, where the Rams will play the Bears later tonight in a game that's sure to be a great one. Vinny, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing good. Where would USC be on the Heisman list if Reggie didn't get his taken away?
Oh,
they're right up there.
They would be up there. You're right. Absolutely. A USC, of course, with that incredible history, not only wide receiver, but running back.
Can they give him his Heisman back and stop messing around already? Just give Reggie his Heisman back.
Yeah, and he's a San Diego kid.
Let him back. And let him back at the welcome him back into good graces.
Absolutely.
Crying out loud.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Absolutely. I agree 100%, even though I am not a fan of USC because I am Irish through and through. But I agree with you 100%, Vinny. Now, speaking of running backs, one of the things I saw, it's really entertaining. If you guys don't follow Vinny on Twitter, you should. And, of course, Vinny covers the Rams full-time, so you might say, well, I'm not a Rams fan. Still, Vinny's conversations around the NFL are very, very interesting. And one that you had, and I noticed because it piqued my interest, was I've been saying all season long, Vinny, that, hey, the era of the dominant NFL running back, with the exception of 2 or 3 guys, is over because of the spread offenses and how things are going. If you look at this year in the NFL, quarterbacks, there's 12 quarterbacks thrown for 400-plus yards in a game. Completion percentage, touchdown passes, and passing ratings in the NFL are all at an all-time high for the league. But you pointed out, Vinny, and stats and facts and actual facts are actually important things. You said, no, not true, that the running backs are just as important as ever, even though things have changed. And you had some stats. I think you said, 8 of the 12 teams that would be in the NFL today have the top 10 running backs? Or what was your argument there when you were talking about the running backs?
8 of the top 12 rushing teams, rushing yardage overall, would be in the playoffs if the season were to end today. 9 of the 14 would 9 of 14 would be in the playoffs today. The 14th, which was the Kansas City Chiefs, have a top 5 rushing average per attempt. So when you look at I think it's like 3 more of those 14, of those 14, almost like 13 of 14 or 12 of 14, I should say, are within a game of the playoffs. So you have to. I agree with you. The dominant running back might not necessarily be as prevalent. Your top guys that are just the workhorse guys. Now you have a Todd Gurley. Let's say he's one of those type of guys, but those are probably waning a little bit. But the necessity and the importance of running is just as important today as it's ever been. You have to be able to run the ball. You have to be effective running the ball to be successful in this league for varying reasons. One is to help accentuate your pass and complement your pass. The other is, when you do have a lead and you want to start running some clock, you have to be able to successfully run the ball. And I'll point out a team that's glaring in terms of not being able to run the ball, and their statistics show that their overall statistics. I'm talking about the Minnesota Vikings. They're way up there in passing. They're pretty good in scoring, and they're very good at defense. Okay, but they're fading as we speak because they cannot run the ball. They have so many losses.
Good point.
And have struggled so much because they cannot run the ball and they can't establish a run game. So that's an example of a team that everything else is working for them, but they can't run the ball, and now they're struggling.
I think one of the most underrated stats in football is time of possession, and that goes to the running game. I mean, if it's great if you can score a lot and if your offense is explosive, But time of possession is so important for your defense more than anything, to keep your defense off the field and at the same time keep another team's offense off the field, to just establish, like you mentioned, that running game that kills clock. That it's kind of debilitating as a defense to sit there and know that on a 3rd and 4 they're just going to run it down your throat and there's nothing you can do about it. Unfortunately, we've seen the Raiders fall into that a lot this season. I like running backs. I mean, Todd Gurley's great. Guys like Melvin Gordon, who just kind of smash it in there a lot of times. But the how dynamic they can be nowadays. I think you get so many more running backs that are like Marshall Faulk. Marshall Faulk, and they had, that offense, the greatest show on turf, was a lot like what you see today. But could you imagine a guy like that in today's system and how dynamic he could have been?
No, yeah, there's no question about it. And I think that we get confused or seduced by the spread offense. Well, the spread offense also runs the ball. Look at Oklahoma. Oklahoma is very close to being as balanced as you could possibly be. They may even run it more than they throw it. I'd have to look at the stats, the most recent stats. Notre Dame is in the same category. They're a spread offense, but they run the ball. You can run the ball out of the spread offense, and a lot of times successfully. Because you're creating matchups and you're creating space and you're creating not confusion, but you're asking a defense to pick it or choose how you're going to defend. If you're going to bring 11 guys on the block into the box, we're going to throw the ball. If you're going to drop coverage back, now it's creating running room, and it's exploiting what the defense is doing. That's the most important part of it all. But you do still, to this day, have to do both of them well.
No, absolutely. And, I mean, we look at those running backs, too. I mean, Todd Gurley, of course, is in a league by himself, while Ezekiel Elliott's only 25 yards behind him as far as the league rushing title. And I know we got several weeks to go. And they have about equal the number of snaps. Gurley with 272. Elliott has 279. But Gurley, 15 touchdowns, so they're getting opportunities, or he's getting opportunities that Elliott's not. But also, if you look at the top running backs in the league, Vinny, the number 1 and 2 are Gurley and Elliott. Then you have Barkley and Lindsey, right? So Denver, is around 500-ish, and then of course the Giants not having a great year. But it goes to show you. I mean, imagine those teams without those runners. They probably have 2 or 3 less losses, or I should say wins. But this all brings us back to, Vinny, to the Raiders. The Raiders have been doing running back by commission. Of course, they lost Marshawn Lynch, who was running really well before he got injured. But how much does this say for in Gruden's spread offense system, too, that they're going to have to go out and get a running back, and there's going to be a Le'Veon Bell out there who's going to be he's going to have high demand, I should say. So right. How important is it going to be for the Raiders, and knowing Jon Gruden's offense well, how important is it for them to go get a featured back this offseason?
Well, I don't know that it necessarily has to be a featured back, but they definitely have to get talent at the running back. I'm not so sure, paying a Bell is the way to go in their case. But they do have to develop a running back. They do have to develop a running game, and part of that is the offensive line. Part of that is Derek Carr, who's been coming on now. He's playing much better than earlier in the season. You look at his statistics; he's playing pretty well this year. So I give him a lot of credit for that. But he does need somebody to complement him in terms of being able to lean on a run game, whether it is again to help accentuate his throwing or to help bleed clock, to preserve leads. They just need to. You have to have balance. Right now they don't have balance. They're so much more heavy pass, and I think their wins and losses reflect that. But also they need to fix their defense as well. I think that's where some of their resources need to go. But it's a whole combination of things. It's getting a good running back. It's developing your offensive line as well. So it'll be interesting for the Raiders coming up. This is a critical offseason. We all know that. They have a lot of draft capital. They have a lot of money under the cap, and these next couple of years are going to set the stage for the next 10 years or so for them. And they have some critical decisions to make, and if they hit on them, then they're going to put themselves in a really good position by the time they get to Las Vegas.
Vinny, before we let you go, I've got a minute or two left. What are you hearing about the Reggie McKenzie situation? The report now is that he's on his way out, kind of a lame duck here in the last month of the season. Are you hearing anything new?
nothing official, but considering the importance of the off seasons that they're facing, starting with this one, the draft capital that they have, the money that they have under the cap, Jon Gruden understanding it's critical that we hit. We have to hit. We have to maximize these assets that we have. I would say that expect some changes. Expect some changes on the football side of it, and Jon is in charge of that whole side of the building, and I think that they're giving him as much confidence to make the decisions that he needs to make, and not just players, but also bringing in help from scouts to general manager to everything in running that operation. So I would expect changes to be made. Yes.
All right. Vinny Bonsignore from The Athletic in Los Angeles joining us live from Chicago. Vinny, we'll talk to you next week.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
Take care, man.
All right, Vinny, as always, thank you for being with us. Okay, we're going to step aside. When we come back, the interview we've all been waiting for, and that, of course, is 2002 NFL MVP Rich Gannon, Raider quarterback, the last one to take them to the Super Bowl. Rich Gannon joins us right after the break, so make sure you don't go anywhere on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
Callers and guests on the Newsmaker line are brought to you by the Law of This is Silver and Black Today, live on CBS Sports Radio 1140. Here's your host, Scott Gulbranson.
Hey there, folks. Hold on just a minute. Got some issues here on the technical side. We're going to get to Rich Gannon here in just a minute. Until then, though, let's talk a little bit about what's happening here. We had a technical issue, and so we're going to get Rich here on in just a second, so stick with us. But the Raiders later on today, head out, and they go to play the Steelers. The Steelers are coming to Oakland to play. So we'll see if they can do it. I think they're going to have a shot. Welcome back to the Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140 AM in Las Vegas. And today we are joyed to be joined by, of course, a Raiders fan favorite, and that is Rich Gannon, 18-year NFL career. Of course, Raiders fans love him. He's the last Raider quarterback to take them to the Super Bowl. He was the NFL MVP in 2002, and Matt Katera is my co-host. 4,700 yards that year, 26 touchdowns, 27 the year before, actually. And now a sports analyst on NFL on CBS, of course. And Rich joins us on the attorney Michael Troiano Newsmaker line. Rich, how are you today?
I'm doing great, guys. How are you?
Doing excellent. Good to have you on, Rich.
Doing fantastic. And, hey, a quick personal note, Rich. I just want to say thank you for your work around celiac disease. I have an 11-year-old son who has celiac disease, was diagnosed at 2. Your story about your daughter at 1 year old, and my son at 2 was about the same. So thank you for all the awareness and all the work you've done in that area.
Well, I appreciate it. You know, it's an autoimmune disorder that affects as many as 1 in 133 Americans. So it's a lot more common than people think. And we're gluten-free here in the Gannon household. And so but thank you for recognizing really most of my wife's hard work. Shelly's been a real advocate for celiac disease.
Oh, yeah, I know. We know that, too. We are a gluten-free house as well. All right, well, let's dive into the football now, Rich. And, of course, we are the only all-Raiders talk show here in Las Vegas, the future home of the Raiders. And the Raiders this year, everyone knows about the struggles, but at the same time, the Raiders, you know, they're making progress. If you look at all the roster changes, if you look at some of the young talent that they've put on this roster, you're starting to see, as you would expect, week-to-week improvement. What have you seen so far that encourages you about what Jon Gruden and what the organization's doing there in Oakland?
I would agree. I mean, I think when you really look under the hood, I think they gave the Chiefs all they could handle last week. You know, obviously beating the Cardinals was an important win, and you hope you can build some momentum off of that. But, you know, look, Rome wasn't built in a day, and they've made some dramatic changes out there in Oakland, and I'm not just talking about personnel. And I think it's going to take a while. I know it's tough when you're trying to play football on offense with 2 rookies at tackles, you know, and Colton Miller's learning on the job, and, you know, Brandon Parker's had struggles. And then, you know, you look at the injury situation, and, you know, losing a guy like Marshawn Lynch is significant in terms of what you're trying to get accomplished running the football. And I really thought they'd be a better rushing football team than what they've been. And then, you know, obviously some of the trades. You know, I think moving on from Khalil Mack and Amari Cooper, I think on the long haul will be a benefit to this team when you look at accumulating not only draft picks and players in free agency, but having the ability, having the resources, the financial resources to be able to do that. And, I agree with both trades. I love Khalil Mack. I just felt like, you know, to pay him that kind of money for a team that was going to be really in a kind of a reset mode was going to be hard to do. And then Amari Cooper has been kind of inconsistent, guys. I think everyone knows that about him. And so I think it's a chance to get a look at some of the younger players. But, look, I have a lot of confidence that Jon Gruden is doing the right things. We've had some conversations. I know it's been a painful journey so far, but hopefully they finish strong here in December and carry some of that momentum into the offseason program.
Hey, Rich, Matt Gutierrez here. You know as well as anybody that it's the team success largely comes down to how the quarterback and the coach get along together. You had more success with Jon Gruden really than any other quarterback he's had. I was surprised to see that even in only 3 years with Gruden, you had more starts under him than any other quarterback that he's had. How much of this success with this team going forward hinders on the work ethic that these two have, and what does it take to get into that room with Jon Gruden and to get on his level and be the kind of quarterback that he expects you to be?
I think it's pretty simple. I mean, I think if you want to be great and you love football, I don't know that there's a better person to work with. And I think you have to embrace that opportunity and the challenge of working with Jon. He's ultra competitive. He's highly motivated. He's compassionate. He's got a lot of things that you love, not just in terms of a play caller, but also a head coach. And I tried to impress upon Derek in the off season when we had time to visit at mini camp, at training camp, just about embracing that. And I think he's done that. And I think a lot of people are making a big deal about the relationship. I think the relationship is fine. I think it'll continue to grow and mature and evolve. And look, you can criticize Derek all you want. He's thrown twice as many touchdowns as interceptions so far. He's completing almost 70% of his passes. The protection has not been great at times. The defense has been disappointing, to say the least. And so you have to go out and score 30 points every week to be competitive. So I think Derek's going to be just fine. I think this is, obviously the first year together, and Jon and Gruden and I's first year together was full of peaks and valleys. But we were able to come through that. We finished 8-8. We beat the Chiefs in Arrowhead the last game of the season. That really carried into the following season, I thought. We had momentum, and the following season we went 12-4 and really had one of our best teams in Oakland.
Yeah, again, we're talking to Rich Gannon, former Raiders great, and, of course, the NFL MVP in 2002. Rich, staying on Derek Carr, in my view, there's been a lot of, I think, unfair criticism of him out there, trying to make him a scapegoat a lot of the times. When yes, any quarterback, it doesn't matter, especially for fans who think they're coaches sometimes, they can look at a quarterback's performance and pick it apart. But I think he continues to get more comfortable. Again, fourth playbook in 5 years. Now on the back end of this season, you're starting to see him get more comfortable. What are you seeing from him the last few weeks that show that he's progressing where I'm sure Coach Gruden wants him to be?
I think you look at the feet. That's important. His footwork, the anticipation, getting the ball out quick, just looking comfortable under center. He's always had the big arm. I think accuracy's never really been an issue for Derek. I just think it's continuing to run the offense and to do the little things necessary to be really efficient. And some of that requires changing plays, changing protections, changing formations, doing it on the fly. And there's a lot of responsibility on the quarterback in this offense at the line of scrimmage. There's multiple play calls. There's checks for the run game, away from the down safety or to the guard bubble or to the reduction or, all these different rules. And so it involves a lot of studying and memorization and preparation each week. I think Derek has done that. I think he's getting more and more comfortable. I think he's getting a better understanding of how Jon calls the game, what he's looking for, what are the rules and the system. As you point out, he's had so much change around him. That's a very almost debilitating thing for a quarterback. If you're constantly changing head coaches, coordinators, quarterback coaches, systems, playbooks, it's hard. And I think that certainly affected his growth and development. But still, when you look at what he's done and the numbers and the production, you have to be encouraged. The one thing that's discouraging is the one-loss record. And I think that's something that he's got to get straightened out. It's not just Derek, it's the entire football team. But ultimately, that's how we're judged in this business. It's not how many yards you throw or how many touchdowns or, the guy in Detroit throwing a lot of yards, a lot of touchdowns, and got a lot of those type of things, but he doesn't have a lot of wins, especially not against teams with winning records. Mm-hmm. And so that's going to be the important thing for Derek. He's got to find a way, regardless of the personnel around him, to get his team to the finish line each week. To be more competitive, to be a better decision maker, to be able to have his team in position in the fourth quarter to win games. And I think that's the next step for Derek Carr.
Rich, I want to expand a little bit on him grasping this offense. You know how difficult that offense is, and a lot of talk about essentially the paragraph-long play calls that Gruden likes to throw at you. How hard was it for you back in '99 to really get a hold of that system and that verbiage and really get comfortable with it?
I was fortunate because I had come from Kansas City. I'd spent 4 years there prior to my arrival in Oakland, and it was very similar system. Terminology and the verbiage was very similar, the protections, and so I also had the benefit of being a veteran quarterback and knowing how to prepare, knowing how to study, knowing how to take a game plan, and really breaking it down and memorizing early in the week the protections and the formations and so that when the play came in, it was second nature to me. So I think he's learned that. I really don't believe the mental aptitude is at all an issue for a guy like Derek. I was there in the mini camps. I was there in training camps. I sat in the quarterback rooms, the quarterback meetings. He is very sharp. He's got a high football IQ. It comes out of his mouth very quickly. He understands all the rules, the adjustments, the checks. So I really don't think that's so much of the issue. Sometimes it's not whether or not the quarterback can handle it, guys. It's whether or not the other 10 players can handle it. Remember now, you got a bunch of rookies playing. You got to be protection conscious with the tackles. You've got some young receivers playing. So I think it's not just in terms of what the quarterback can handle, but what can the other 10 players handle as well.
Well, and Rich, when you look at this year too, as a player, when you're in a situation where you're having a down year from a win-loss perspective, like the Raiders are having this year, what sort of accomplishments and goal setting do you set internally for yourself as a player and then as a team so that you feel like you're making that progress and you can turn so many negatives into positives, as you said at the end of that 8-8 season for you, and moving it so that when you go off season, you're feeling much more positive than you did maybe in the middle of it?
It's a great point. Unfortunately, you can have all these goals and say, well, if I complete 70%, and we don't turn the ball over, and we're good on third down and situational football down the red zone. Then I'm doing what I have to do to put my team in a best position to have a chance to win. Problem is if you do that and you still lose, and you get on that bus and you head back to the plane and you're flying home, you feel terrible. So unfortunately, in the business that we're in, there's no consolation prizes. There's no, hey, you completed 75% and threw 4 touchdowns and no picks, but you still lost. I mean, I've had those games, and it feels really bad. So I just think the important thing for Derek is just focusing in on all the little things it takes to be competitive. I think to be more and more demanding of his teammates, to make sure that everyone is on the same page, make sure everyone's done the work during the course of the week. I was a sticker for that, guys, because when I went out to Oakland, it wasn't, I mentioned before, it was a bit dysfunctional, and guys that were there when I first got there weren't there. Following year, a couple years later, we eventually got rid of them because a lot of those guys didn't understand what it meant to be professional. They didn't understand what it meant to take great pride in your preparation, your performance each week, just getting ready to play the game. And so that's going to be important for Derek. That he puts in so much time and effort and energy preparing that you got to make sure the young guys are doing the same.
They're doing the same.
They're demanding of them.
And Rich, I know
that's what Peyton Manning does.
Yep.
Or did, and that's what Drew Brees does and Tom Brady. They're very demanding of their teammates, and that's what's going to be important for Derek.
Well, and that's what we hear fans, because fans, when they come up to us, whether we're at a remote broadcast or we're online, whatever, they say to us, how come he's not doing what Rich Gannon did? How come he's not getting up in the face of his linemen and screaming orders and saying, hey, and it's not that you were just screaming at those guys. You were demanding that they do their jobs and they focus and they work hard. And so I think you have become that benchmark for Derek Carr. And I know it's not fair to compare one quarterback to the other all the time, but certainly that's what's happened.
Rich,
well, when I was in Kansas City, if you ever watched any of the games where I played for 4 years there, I never had to do that. I was never part of my MO. But when I went out to Oakland, I realized, at some point you got to speak up. At some point you got to put your foot down. If what you're seeing on the practice field, if what you're seeing in the meeting room and the weight room is not up to the standards that we've set as an organization, then you better speak up as a veteran guy. And I did that because I thought I needed to. I thought it was an organization that lacked leadership in some key areas. The locker room, in my opinion, wasn't very good. It eventually got to be pretty good when we brought in the right type of players, guys like Jerry Rice and John Perella and Rod Woodson and Trace Armstrong and Bill Romanowski. I go on and on. The types of the guys that took really a great deal of pride in being professional. So That's what you have to continue to do. This roster is going to look very different next year, as it's looked different this year.
The whole year.
And it continues to look different. But you just got to make sure you're bringing in the right type of player. The player that really loves competing, working together for a common goal, and ultimately trying to win a championship for the Oakland Raiders.
Now, Rich, we'll get you out on this. Big elephant in the room out here, obviously. The stadium's being built right down the street from where we're at. Raiders are coming to Las Vegas. You played for them in Oakland. What do you think about the move here? How do you think this organization fits in with Las Vegas?
I got on board early because I knew they weren't going to get a stadium built in Oakland. I think the Las Vegas situation is an incredible opportunity for not just the organization but for Raider fans. I think it's going to be a new beginning in terms of a new stadium, new practice facility. It's going to help make our organization more competitive in terms of free agency, in terms of revenue and those type of things. That's important in order to run a successful team in today's NFL. So I think it's going to be awesome. I can't wait to see it built. I know a lot of the folks that are down there. Tom Bland is one of my guys. That's down there and very active and with the stadium construction. Mortensen Construction are friends of mine, so I know it's going to be an incredible facility, and I'm just anxious not only to see it, but to call a game there for the preseason and also for CBS. But I just want to see this team do well, guys. You know that about.
Oh yeah.
I am neutral. I work for a network that broadcasts the NFL games, but I got a special place in my heart, as you know, for the Raiders and for Derek. I want to see Derek. I don't want to see him do well. I want to see him crush it, and I want to see Jon Gruden get what he deserves because no one works harder than Jon Gruden.
All right, great way to end it, Rich, and we'll catch up with you during the offseason. We certainly thank you for all your time today.
You guys are the best. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Rich.
Rich Gannon, of course, analyst now on NFL on CBS and great Raiders quarterback. We're going to step aside, and we'll be back here on the Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
This is Cliff Branch, formerly of the Oakland Raiders, 3-time Super Bowl champ, 4-time Pro Bowl, and you listen to the Silver and Black Show.
Number 21. Number 21. He could light it up still today.
Mm-hmm.
Great shape. Anyway, by the way, I don't know if you ever watch, but they do the Raiders do a segment. Matt, Scott Branson, Matt Gutierrez, you're on Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140 AM, the only All Raiders show here in Las Vegas. Matt, on weekly they do a show with Jon Gruden where he kind of breaks down film from the previous week, and plus the week coming up. And he talked about Villapiano bringing Franco to the game and all. He said, "Oh, there's rumors that he's bringing." I'm like, "Yeah, he listens to our show." But no, he said very quickly, but I caught it and I kept rewinding it to make sure I heard it right. Cliff Branch is his roommate on the road. Jon Gruden's roommate. I'm like, Jon Gruden has a roommate.
Yeah, well, shouldn't he have
It must be a two-room suite.
Shouldn't he have the suite? I mean, yeah.
It must be a two-room suite. But anyway, we are back here, and we have talking to Rich Gannon, Matt, was fantastic.
Yeah, that was great, man.
And you said, like, if you were watching the broadcast on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, wherever you are, you saw highlights of Gannon, and you were talking, Matt, how fun it was to watch those highlights.
I loved watching Gannon play when I was younger, man. He was the ultimate leader out there, really took control of that offense. Great touch on the ball, and one of my favorite aspects of Gannon was his ability to run and scramble. He wasn't a Steve Young type runner, even though he had that ability without question.
No doubt.
He just found a way to buy himself time, and if there was a lane and he could get to the end zone, he was through it instantly. I mean, he had such great vision out there. I found what he said about Carr really interesting. You can tell that he believes in Carr's ability. He talked about Carr's feet. Talked about his grasp of the offense and how he's coming along. But then he also mentioned the win-losses as being the thing that he has a little trepidation on.
And putting his team in position to win.
Yeah, and that's a thing that we need to see change from Derek Carr. I think he believes in Carr as a quarterback, but maybe not yet as a winner. We'll have to see where that goes. Again, next season, being in an offense for the second year can only help Carr. We'll see if it actually does.
That's right. And I think that's the key thing. I think everybody likes Derek Carr. Everybody knows he has talent. The point is, can he get there? And can he get to the point as a leader to get his team in a position to win games? And I think that's what Rich Gannon. And again, thanks to Rich for joining us. Very, very gracious with his time. Now, there's still a lot ahead here on CBS Sports Radio 1140 AM on Silver and Black today. Coming up at the top of the hour, Mo Moton from Bleacher Report joins us on Derek Carr, and we'll ask him about the report this morning about Reggie McKenzie. Austin Gayle in the second segment. Ray Fittipaldo from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette also joins us. So don't go anywhere. You're listening to the Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio 1140 AM.
again on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
The most in-depth coverage of the Silver and Black as they set their sights on Las Vegas for 2020. Live from the CBS Sports Radio 1140 studios, it's Silver and Black Today. Join the conversation by calling 702-889-5978. Now, here's Scott Gulbranson and Matt Gutierrez.
Welcome back. Glorious NFL Sunday. While there's still some left, we're getting to the tail end of the season, Matt Gutierrez.
Yeah, man. Chilly outside.
It's getting chilly. It's chilly by Vegas standards, of course. But busy morning thus far. Again, thanks to Rich Gannon for joining us in the previous segment. Great conversation with him to hear what he had to say about the team and about Derek Carr. And speaking of Derek Carr, we're now going to bring up one of my favorite guys in Raiderland, if you'll call it that, Raider Nation. And that is Moton from Bleacher Report. Mo covers the Raiders. He also does a lot more on the NFL. But a guy who speaks truth, and a guy, Matt, who speaks fact and logic, which is great. Mo, thanks for joining us here on your first time on the Silver and Black Today on CBS Sports Radio.
I appreciate that introduction. You got me blushing over here. Usually people are on my mentions screaming at me because they either, even sometimes they love my team, they hate it, but I like to think that I keep it objective down the middle. I'm not going to overpraise a player. I'm not going to just continue to hate on a person. I just like to call it how I see it, and that's how I roll.
Mo, Matt Gutierrez here. I've been following you on Twitter for a while now, and like you said, you don't pull any punches. You're pretty upfront with the way you feel about things, and it's not just emotional reaction to things and kind of you see a lot of fans that there's no fact behind whatever they're saying. There's nothing to back up any of their arguments. You come with a lot of legitimacy and really point out what's going on with the team, with the player. One of the things that you've been really big on is the news that broke today, which is it sounds like Reggie McKenzie's out, and you've been all over that saying, look, this is Carr's show. He's calling, or not Carr, Gruden's show, and he's calling the shots, and McKenzie's going to be on his way out. What are you hearing on that front?
Yeah, basically on that front is basically what we would all expect. When a head coach comes in and he's paid $100 million over 10 years, a lot of people make a big deal of that. But when he's the guy of the apple of Mark Davis's eye, he's gonna have say over the final roster. And at that point, you know that McKenzie, with his spotty draft record, he's not going to have much power. And a lot of people say, well, no, they're going to get along, and this is how it should be. A general manager should defer to his head coach because the head coach is out there. He's out there coaching these guys. And I agree with that. But a general manager should have some sort of say-so in how a roster gets sculpted. And I don't think Reggie McKenzie had pretty much, if any. Reports came out that the two had different draft boards. Ian Rappaport came out and said that Reggie McKenzie's guys weren't happy, that Gruden's people weren't listening to them. To me, that speaks of dysfunction, and you don't need that in the front office, so it's not a surprise that Reggie McKenzie's probably going to be on his way after the season.
All right.
And I will say this, you guys, really quick, you guys mentioned that McKenzie did a good job of stabilizing the post-Al Davis days, and he did that. Now, yes, he had a spotty draft record, but the abilities what the Raiders needed, he at least brought that along with some cap space flexibility.
Yeah, no, the cap space is a big issue for them, and he did a great job of that, Mo. And I think that much like I thought Jack Del Rio did that from a coaching perspective, kind of stabilized things to get it into a good shape. Then, of course, they came in and blew everything up, so what do I know? But one of the things, too, that I've seen you really go down, and that's the thing, I think in today's kind of hypersensitive social media world, Raider fans read writers and reporters and opinion leaders, and they want more of like a fan's perspective. And I think the what you do is you try to bring what I think is old school journalism, which is kind of the objectivity, which is great. And one of those situations that I think you've been really a leader on and been very, very good on has been on Derek Carr. Now, Derek Carr has been really the whipping child for a lot of Raider fans who look at him and say, well, he's not doing this. He threw an interception in the end zone against the Chargers, and he did all of that. But as we've seen, and you retweeted, I think it was PFF, talked about his passer rating going from in Week 10 from a 59.6 to last week being at 120.4. Talk about where Derek Carr is and why Raider fans need to realize that the grass isn't always greener.
Okay, so first I'll start off with saying, you just look around the league. Blake Bortles is out in Jacksonville. You just can't just shuffle quarterbacks and think that you're just going to get an upgrade wherever you go or through the draft. And with Derek Carr, where he is now, is he's in a new system, his fourth system in 5 years. And I think Rich Gannon talked about this. When you're constantly changing systems and changing schemes, you're going to have some hiccups. You're going to have some ups and downs. So to judge Derek Carr now, 12 games into the season, to me, you got to get a lot more time with Gruden. Gruden notoriously has a playbook that's complex. We heard about Martavis Bryant, a wide receiver, grasping the playbook. So imagine a quarterback who has all these checks and audibles, and he's working around new pieces. He doesn't have Crabtree. He doesn't have Amari Cooper. He's got some new parts around him. He's got 2 rookie offensive tackles, and he's been sacked the most times in his career, I believe 38 times. So you have to look at it from an objective standpoint of Derek Carr is learning a new system. He's absorbing everything, and you're at least seeing progress. No interceptions in the last 7 games. And he's playing pretty well lately in these games to at least keep the Raiders in these games against the Cardinals, against the Colts, briefly against the Chiefs. I know people are saying, well, the Chiefs' pass defense isn't that great. But if you look at the Cardinals and the Colts, which he played well in those games, both those teams are top 10 in passing touchdowns allowed, meaning least amount of passing touchdowns allowed through the air. He played well in those games. So you have to give him credit for at least the progress in a short span. Now, again, 4th system in 5 years, give him some time before you really judge him harshly. Again, 2 rookie offensive tackles also. He's got a pass rush bearing down him based on every snap. So give it some time.
Yeah, we're talking to Moton again from Bleacher Report about the Raiders.
Mo, I found it really interesting what Gannon said. I mentioned it in the last segment, that it seems like he really believes in Carr's ability as a quarterback, his physical abilities, the gifts that he has as a quarterback. But he mentioned the discouraging thing being the win-loss record, and that's outside of that 12-4 year, which 11 of those wins came from Carr. Or, excuse me, all 12 came from Carr. The last loss didn't come from Carr. But outside of that, he hasn't had a winning season. Do you think that speaks more to the guys around him, or is it just a product of every year he's got to change the system? That 12-4 year was the only year he's had a system in his second season.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point. That 1 year he had Musgrave, and back to 2016 he had Musgrave in his second year was the only season. I wouldn't say the only season he was pretty good, but it was a season we saw him at his best. And he also had a top 6 running game. So again, when it comes to wins and losses, I think it speaks to the organization as a whole. You need some stability. One of the things that Gruden harped on as soon as he took the job was saying that we have to stop changing systems. We need some stability. We need some continuity. And with him saying that, I know Gruden has been known to talk out of both sides of his mouth, but with him saying that, harping on it, you have to understand that he's most likely going to keep Carr at least for a second year to see what he's got in him. And then hopefully the win-losses come after that. Now, the Raiders are in the middle of a rebuild right now, and Gruden did demolish the roster, basically leaving Carr behind as the last piece of McKenzie's legacy as an executive. But you got to believe that he's going to build around that in offensive line, and again, hope that the wins come after as this team develops, as Carr develops in his system. So again, I would just preach patience. I know it's hard to tell Raider fans because they seem to be in a perpetual rebuild, but patience is key here.
That's and that's exactly what I was going to say is tell fans how important it is, because what do they say right off the bat? Gruden's terrible. He can't coach anymore. Carr's not going to be able to get it done. And after going through all of these systems, they get this one in here, the one that everybody's been pining for, the Jon Gruden system, and instantly they all want to blow it up and start over again. Just tell fans out there how important it is to establish that consistency so that you do have sustained success in the NFL.
I mean, think about it. Even in your regular life, if you had a job and you're constantly just changing schemes, changing the way you do things, remember, these players practice these schemes, they practice these checks at practice all the time. So you're learning habits. You change the system. Now you have to unlearn those habits and learn new habits. And as we know, NFL players are creatures of habit. And it's hard. And as we know, it's hard to break certain habits, certain things you're just going to have a hiccup on. And we saw that at the beginning of the year when he threw some interceptions that were pretty questionable. The one interception to, I believe, in the end zone in the opening game. Melvin Ingram in the end zone again against the Chargers. Mm-hmm. He did have a fade to Martavis Bryant that was picked off by Xavier Howard against the Dolphins. But now you're seeing more completions. I know some of those completions are checkdowns. But I think those checkdowns are to get Derek Carr familiar and comfortable in Gruden's system so that you can see the improvement. And again, repetition brings results most of the time if you have a decent quarterback.
Absolutely, but there you go again, making sense. So we got about a minute and a half with you left, Mo, and I know you have a busy day as you do every Sunday, so thanks for being with us. The thing with Carr, too, is remember, I mean, people forget he's completing 70% of his passes behind an offensive line that ranks 27th in pass protection, okay? Now, you talked about 2 rookies playing on that line, Mo. At this point in the season, what's your view? I remember your thoughts when the Raiders had the draft. What are your thoughts now on that draft class from 2018, including the 2 tackles?
Well, I think I'll admit that I was wrong about Colt Miller. Outside of when he had an injury, he had to leave an MCL injury, he's been pretty solid. P.J. Hall, I was a little worried about. He needs to show more. Brandon Parker, I never understood that pick, and I still don't to this day. And I think they might need another offensive tackle, a veteran this time. I think Arden Key, if he bulks up, he can be a lot better. I have high hopes for Nick Nelson. I love the Maurice Hurst pick, and I think he's eventually going to be a player that's going to be a key on that defensive line to help stop the run because, you know, the Raiders' run defense is pretty bad. And I think Marcel Aimee will come along as a complimentary wide receiver, but they still need a de facto number 1 guy that Carr can develop with as he would have with Amari Cooper.
That's great. Mo, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Mo Moton, you can catch him, Bleacher Report, one of the best guys in all of Raider Nation to follow on Twitter, so do that. Mo, we'll talk to you again real soon. Thanks.
Appreciate you guys having me. Thanks.
Thanks, Mo. All
right. Mo Moton again. Always nice to talk to somebody who is really professional and knows what they're talking about.
Yeah, you know, I'm 1,000% on board with the Arden Key thing. I'm sure I've said it on here before.
Oh, yeah.
That kid has a large frame. He's got a lot of room to grow. When he bulks up, I think he's going to be dangerous.
I do, too. Let's hope he can do that. All right, we're going to step aside. We'll be back. When we come back, Austin Gayle, Pro Football Focus. You're listening to Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
15 on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
Help us talk the Silver and Black. Call us at 702-889-5978. Here's Matt Gutierrez and your host, Scott Gulbranson, on CBS Sports Radio 1140 AM.
Welcome back. Happy Sunday to everybody. We are just jamming through. Holy moly, just an amazing show today. Rich Gannon, we just got done with Moton. We now are going to bring in our resident San Diego State Aztec. I have to say that because I grew up in San Diego.
You know we're not Aztec fans in Vegas, man. You got to stop saying that.
And that, of course, is one of our favorite guys in all of football, and that is Austin Gayle from Pro Football Focus. Austin, how you doing this morning? And what about this breaking news about Reggie McKenzie and his time in Oakland coming to an end, most likely at the end of the season?
I'm doing great, man. And for the Reggie McKenzie news, you can't be surprised. I mean, the writing was on the wall dating back to the offseason, the draft. Everything pointed to Jon Gruden running the show, and I think Reggie McKenzie was going to leave, whether Gruden pushed him out, whether Mark Davis pushed him out, or whether he just wants to leave. I think he's been given a corner office that no one pays attention to in that building, and not given any choice in the matter in terms of where this franchise is going. I think he wants to go somewhere where he matters again, where he can get involved in the draft process and the free agency, and I think Oakland is in that spot now with Gruden at the helm.
Austin, great to talk to you again. Sorry about the Aztec thing, man. I can't get on board with it. Let's jump into the Raiders on the field now. Me and Scott talk about it a lot, the defensive back situation, and it seems like no matter how hard they try, they can't seem to solidify that defensive backfield. But it looks like guys like Connolly and Nick Nelson and even Carl Joseph are starting to come around and play a little better. What have you seen on that side of the ball?
Darren Conley is vastly improved now that the coaching staff and I think even other players have instilled some confidence in him. He's not on a short leash anymore. He's not afraid if he gives up a big play, he's going to get the hook. He is the solidified starter, and he's getting starter-level snaps and getting better every week. And I think this guy's still a rookie. He played under 100 snaps his rookie year due to injury, and the fact that he was not cut, but put to the bench earlier in the season did not help his development. The Raiders were not in a position where they had enough talent to push Conley to the bench. But now that he's back and starting, he's gaining reps he didn't get last year and getting better before our eyes. And as for Carl Joseph, he's doing the same. He was in the doghouse similar to Garyon Conley because he wasn't maybe a Jon Gruden draft pick or whatever it may be, but he's in the starting lineup now too, and he's playing a lot better, playing well against the run, in a new role, playing that deep safety role rather than getting caught in man coverage against 6'5" tight ends. It's crazy to see how much better those two guys have gotten, and I think they're solidifying themselves in the 2019 plans with their play.
And Austin, you said it. Weeks 11 through 13, Garyon Conley has allowed 15 yards and an 8.3 pass rating in coverage, and now ranks 6th overall with a 65.5 according to your grades on the year. I mean, again, this goes to what you were saying about reps and the fact that you had to get the guy time and to know the system and to get out there and play. Are you now feeling that he is solidified himself? Is he going to do? I mean, we have to see what he's got to do over the next few weeks, right? But he's starting to really show that talent, and I think there's still people out there who are naysayers about him. But if you go off the limited sample size, it's hard not to say that this kid is not only getting better, but he's starting to show that he needs to be a starter in the NFL.
Absolutely. I think that speaks to it in volumes. He's only allowed 15 yards in coverage in the last 3 games. And it's because, one, he's making great plays on the ball. You saw that against Baltimore. They tried to test him against Michael Crabtree deep down the field, and he was able to turn his head around, make a nice PBU, and even more so in the weeks after that. I think he is playing well. In addition to that, I think guys, other offenses are going away from him, similar to how they used to play Nnamdi Asomugha. When you have a really good cornerback and the guy opposite of him kind of sucks, like Darryl Worley has allowed a lot of yards, Rashaan Melvin hasn't played well, Nick Nelson is still a rookie and didn't play most of the first part of the season, so he's learning on the fly too. I think, other offenses are avoiding Garyon Conley because he's the clear-cut best cornerback on the field when the Raiders do trot out that defense. And I think that just speaks volumes to how well he's performed, and also volumes to just the lackluster talent outside of Conley. Daryl Worley has been underwhelmed, same with Nick Nelson. Leon Hall, even though injured, didn't play well during the season. I think he is proving that he's the best cornerback on this team, like he should, like everyone should have thought he was earlier in the season. And the Raiders really can't afford to go into 2019 when Daryl Worley's on a one-year deal, Rashawn Melvin's on a one-year deal, Leon Hall's on a one-year deal, to not keep Conley. He's going to be the only piece of consistency, and he's the best cornerback on the team.
The thing I love about Connolly is we've seen Raider cornerbacks over the last several years stay with guys step for step, but none of them seem to be able to locate the ball. And I love that Connolly can get his head around, like you mentioned, locate the ball, get those pass breakups. I'm sure we'll start seeing interceptions come his way. But go back to Nick Nelson specifically. You mentioned he didn't play at all at the beginning of the year. He's starting to get into the fold now more often. Do you think that he's going to progress and be a top end pick like they made him this last season, or is he just not going to get there?
The sample size is too small to really evaluate his NFL play, but going into his 1 year at Wisconsin, obviously he was a Hawaii transfer and went to Wisconsin. He played very well, earned really high grades in our system, did great in coverage. I think that's a guy you can see at the NFL ranks. But he's only really had a few snaps this season. I mean, in his first game back, he went against Larry Fitzgerald in the slot. That's not easy to do, to really defend a future Hall of Fame receiver in really your first NFL game. And after that, I think other offenses and offensive coordinators have geared game plans by putting better receivers in the slot to go against Nick Nelson and beat him down. You see that against Keenan Allen and even Willie Snead in Baltimore. They were picking on him easily because he's so young, inexperienced, and you can't really discredit the guy. I mean, going against Larry Fitzgerald is not easy, but he's going to progress. The snaps are very valuable. Snaps in this league for rookies and young players are very valuable. You see that with every player in the NFL. It's rare that your first 100 snaps in the NFL are outstanding. You need those snaps to get better. And Nick Nelson will get better, I believe, if he's given the opportunity. If he has a short leash like other young players on this team have had, it's not going to bode well for him. He needs to play. He needs to play badly in order to play better.
Yeah, and there makes no sense why you wouldn't want to see those kids, because at this point in the season, Jon Gruden needs to see who's going to be there long term, who they can develop, and who they need to let go. Again, we're speaking with Austin Gayle from Pro Football Focus about the Raiders, specifically about the defensive backfield and their progress, Garyon Conley, Nick Nelson, others. Now, Austin, this question for you. As we're talking about this evaluation of looking at guys the rest of the season to see who you're going to keep and where you have need, although it's early, although for some people it's never too early to look at the NFL draft, certainly the Raiders are going to make defensive focus in the draft as well. What do they have to learn between now and the end of the season to decide whether or not they spend a first-round or a second-round pick on another defensive back?
First and foremost, you have to look at the linebacker position. It's been drastically underwhelming, whoever they've put there. Kyle Wilber, Emmanuel Lemur, Tahir Whitehead, Markel Lee, Nicholas Marlowe. It's been a revolving door, a carousel of different players. They need to figure out which guys they like. They need to know which young pieces or old pieces, if you're looking at Tahir Whitehead, a veteran, Emmanuel Lemur, they want to keep that position, because going into this year, they completely rehauled it. 3 different starters in week 1, and moving forward, it's just been a bunch of different people. They need to know if they want to spend significant draft capital at that position, because this is a draft loaded with talent at linebacker. Patty Fisher out of Northwestern, Devin White out of Texas Tech. Devin White out of LSU, and you have Dakota Allen out of Texas Tech, Devin Bush out of Michigan. There's a lot of linebackers in this class that you can like. You just need to know whether it's a position of need and you need to invest in it. Personally, I think absolutely. You need to invest in that position. Outside of that, they already have invested a significant amount of draft capital in the defensive line. You have to hope your second-round pick, DJ Hall, fifth-rounder Maurice Hurst, third-rounder Arden Key, develop into the guys you drafted them to be. And in the secondary as well, you have Carl Joseph, Garyon Conley. Linebacker is a glaring need for this team given the current play. I think that's a position you have to look at for the 2019 draft.
Now, Austin, as bad as the defense has been and everything that comes with that and the wins and losses, everything always goes back to the offensive side, in particular Derek Carr. Everybody's been piling on Derek Carr this season, us included at some points for his constant checkdowns. But then when you look at the numbers, suddenly he's actually having a really good season. He hasn't thrown an interception since the Chargers game. He's really starting to come into his own in this offense. You saw him push the ball down the field last week against the Chiefs, which we haven't seen enough of. How are you grading Derek Carr's overall performance?
This past week, he just narrowly missed Team of the Week for the highest-graded quarterback because of how well he played against the Chiefs. It was outstanding to see that Derek Carr. It was the 2016 Derek Carr. He played well under pressure, fit the ball deep down the field. One in the back of the end zone was incredible. Those throws have been in Derek Carr's arsenal this entire time. He's needed to rebound from the injury. He's needed to relearn how to play under pressure, how to recognize pressure. There were sometimes during last season and earlier in this season where you'd see phantom pressure, where you think the pocket's collapsing, overreact to phantom pressure, and check the ball down. That's not happening as he continues to progress in this season. I think he's continuing to rebound from that injury. It can't be understated how much that impacted him. The broken leg, the back, the finger, that all impacted him so much. And I think he's been able to rebound that as he continues to play this season. And that Derek Carr is the future.
It's a different player altogether. Austin, hey, listen, we got to run. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll talk to you again real soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Austin Gayle has been our guest here on the Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio. We'll be back right after this message. Do not go anywhere. Ray Fittipaldo from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette next on Silver and Black today.
This portion of Silver and Black today.
Hi, this is Steve Wisniewski, and you're listening to the Silver and Black Today.
Man was a beast, man. Number 76.
The Wiz.
What a beast.
He was. Amazing.
You know who he blocked for?
Who?
Rich Gannon.
Rich Gannon, who we just spoke to. No, imagine that. Rich Gannon. Yeah, he comes back up. All right, now we are going to switch focus now, and we're going to focus on today's game later at 1 o'clock up at the Oakland Coliseum. The current home of the Raiders, the future home of the Raiders here in Las Vegas, will join with our good friend Ray Fittipaldo from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. He covers the Steelers. He's joining us live from the Bay Area. How you doing today, Ray?
Morning, guys. How are you?
Doing great.
Doing great. Ready for this rivalry to go. As much as bad as the Raiders are, Ray, as you know, going back through especially the 70s, this rivalry for both sides has been a big one and continues to be. And I don't know if you saw the story. You probably did now, but Phil Villapiano is a good friend of the show, and he has Franco Harris there today, and they're going to be taking Franco to the black hole.
I heard about that early in the week. Jon Gruden did a conference call with Pittsburgh reporters. I believe it was on Wednesday, and he sort of threw that out there. And then I actually saw the tweet earlier this morning from his daughter about. I guess they had dinner last night.
Yeah.
As well, got to visit a little bit. So yeah, I mean, it's great that those old timers. I'm sure even though there was some bad blood back in the day, that those guys can relive those memories and still have good relationships to this day. I think that's what rivalries on the field are one thing, but when these guys get into their 70s and 80s, it's quite another. So it was good to see that.
It is. All right. Well, let's switch gears to the current incarnation of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and of course, last week the loss against the Chargers at home was, I know, a painful one. Where is this team at, and specifically where, if you look at the playoff race and what's happening on the AFC side, it's getting a little bit tighter, but where are the Steelers now, and what is the biggest concern for them to try to make this run, get back in the playoffs?
Well, I think they're still a good football team, guys, but they've just been turning the ball over way too much during this 3-game stretch here. They're lucky to be 1-2. They won in the final minute in Jacksonville, and then they lost in the final minute to Denver, and then, of course, to the Chargers last week. So they're still a good football team. I think they're a team that, might be able to do something in the playoffs if they get there, if they don't turn the ball over, but they can't continue to be a -8 in the turnover differential and think they're going to get there. The Ravens are breathing down their necks. They're just a half a game behind. And I'm not sure if 2-2 is going to be good enough over the final month for the Steelers to get in. 9-6-1. I think it might take 10 wins to get in. The Ravens got a big game today in Kansas City, so we'll see how it goes. But the Steelers have to get back on the winning track today. If they don't, it's going to be a monumental task for them to get to the playoffs.
Ray, Matt Gutierrez here. Thanks for joining us again. We'll get to Le'Veon Bell in a minute, but how big is the James Conner injury now? Him being out, we know the Raiders don't stop the run very well, if at all, and he's been a big part of that offense this season. Without Le'Veon Bell being there, he's been the guy to go to. How big is his injury, and when do you expect to see him back?
Well, I would tell you it's really big, except the Steelers don't even try to run the ball. They're first in the league, and Ben Roethlisberger's #1 in the league in pass attempts. I still think I know this was the case a couple of weeks ago. They threw the ball. Their pass run ratio was #1 in the league, and so can they run the ball? I suppose they can. They got a really good offensive line, lots of highly paid linemen, but they don't really commit to it. So today might be a different story. The Raiders give up 153 yards per game. I still think that's dead last in the NFL or close to it. So they might try to do it again today just because it's a Raiders' weakness. But that really wouldn't be playing to their personality. Their personality is to chuck the ball 40, 45 times a game and see if that's good enough to win on most weeks.
So, Ray, we're talking Ray Fittipaldo from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And, Ray, talk about Ben Roethlisberger. 26 touchdowns, 13 interceptions this year. And, of course, he was I think, somewhat unfairly criticized for calling out some of his teammates, and a guy who's accomplished what he's done and as good as he's been in the league, I think, can kind of do that. But where is Roethlisberger right now as far as his mindset and his focus on getting this team to that 10-win plateau, which you think will get them in the playoffs?
Well, he has that personality, and he's had it for years that he's going to be that gunslinger. Now, that's won a lot of games for the Steelers in the past. Maybe it won them a Super Bowl in the past. But, if you look at his interception total, it's 13. Only Sam Darnold, who's having a really tough rookie year with the Jets, only Sam Darnold has thrown more. You look at guys like Breeze. Breeze has only thrown 3 interceptions the entire season. So that's just way too many for the Steelers. Their defense is just average. I think we saw that last week against the Chargers. They played very well for one half, and then the Chargers put 26 on them in the second half. So, I get it. Roethlisberger thinks the Steelers have to outscore people on a week-to-week basis to win, but I think there's sort of a happy medium that this team has to get to. They got to be able to score points too, but they got to be able to, throw the ball away sometimes, settle for field goals sometimes instead of pressing every single possession for a touchdown. I think that's what has been happening with this team. If you look at that Chargers game last week, guys, he threw a pick when they were 3rd and 10 on the 22-yard line going in for another score. You just can't do that. In tight games like that, like they had last week, you got to get points on every possession you can. And so I think that's the biggest issue for Ben. He's still a top 10 quarterback in my mind. He's just having a really tough year with the picks.
Ray, in relation to the Le'Veon Bell holdout and distraction that he's been, it's been a nasty breakup. It's kind of a hell hath no fury type of breakup with him. And it seemed to really, especially early on in the season, rub guys the wrong way. There's a lot of talk coming out of the locker room and guys pointing fingers back and forth. Has that affected the team this season? Were they able to just move past that and play football, or has that gotten into the minds of guys?
Well, I mean, at one point they won 6 in a row, and it wasn't a problem at all. Now that they've, now that they're going through a tough stretch and they haven't been playing well, that storyline is coming up again. But I'm going to be honest with you guys. When he decided not to report week 1, I think most of those guys in that locker room moved on right then. Week 1, they moved on, and they just played the season like they weren't going to have him. We just talked about James Conner. He was good early, not so good lately, and now he's banged up. So, it's going to be interesting to see what happens today. Stephen Ridley is a vet, but he really hasn't done much in the last couple of years. He was on the street last year at this time before the Steelers picked him up. And then you have a rookie, Jalen Samuels, out of NC State, a 5th-round pick. He was more of a H-back / slot receiver in college than he was a feature back. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. There's a chance that Connor comes back next week against the Patriots, but they're going to have to get by with Ridley and Samuels today. And those guys are going to have to play well, I think, if the Steelers want to win.
So, Ray, okay, let's focus. We got about a minute left. Let's focus on today's game. The Raiders, clearly one of the worst teams in the league, especially if you look at the defensive side of the ball. Do you think this is going to be a get-well game for the for the Steelers on the passing side of things? And how do you think the result will turn out?
Well, I've seen far too many of these Steelers-Raiders matchups in Oakland to think it's going to be easy. I was leaning towards picking the Raiders just because of that past history and just because the Steelers have been, down a little bit lately. But I think the Steelers find a way to get it done today. I think it's going to be a close game. If they limit the turnovers, I think they can win by 7 or 10 points. So I'm going to say Steelers 31, Raiders 23.
Always a good time when the Steelers and Raiders get together. We love the tradition there. We love the history. I love the look on the field when you get those two teams together because it doesn't look any different today than it did in 1970. With the silver and black out there, the black and gold. Really excited to see this game, and I think we're going to have a high-scoring one out there.
All right, Ray Fittipaldo from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Ray, thanks for joining us today, man. Have a good time up there.
All right. Thanks for having me on, guys.
All right. Again, Ray Fittipaldo covers the Steelers for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, one of the great papers in the nation and historic papers, actually, for many, many reasons. But good hearing about the Steelers and what's going on there, and we'll see. I think today could go the Raiders' way just because.
I was thinking, he said, I've seen too many of these games. He's up in the Bay Area right now. Too many of these games between these two teams. next time he goes on the road to cover a Raiders game, he's coming here.
That's right.
How's the look going to be? Man,
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be different. I can't wait. I can't wait to see
It's going to be different. But what, but the question is, when's the last time this game actually meant something? That's the other question. Or does it mean something every time? Who knows?
Yeah, in the standings it doesn't but
mean
I think it means something to the tradition of the game.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to step aside when we come back. We're going to close out the show with Matt's Audible. You don't want to miss that one. You're listening to the Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
For you to an 800 number. For over 15 years, Michael has served.
This morning at 10 on CBS Sports Radio, 1140.
The only way to take Silver and Black today with you is with the radio.com app. Download it today and search CBS Sports Radio 1140 in Las Vegas and listen to us anytime, anywhere.
Oh, there we are. We're back.
Now we're back.
Hey, we're back. We are
Sonia,
back
wake
here.
up over there.
That's right. Sonia was, I don't know, were you watching The Bachelor or something over there, Sonia? I can't figure it out. But anyway, she's back. She's great. Sonia Strohbaum, our engineer extraordinaire, doing her job today for us. Thank you for that. Also, shout out to our friend Jason McKinney out in Missouri.
Yeah, look at that.
Chiefs/somewhat Rams territory. Thanks for listening and watching us on Facebook, Jason. We appreciate it. Now, this is the last segment of our show. We're going to have a good one today. Matt texted me yesterday, gave me a heads up so I could prepare, which was nice.
I kind of just ranted for a minute and then let you know what it was going to be.
But that's okay, because that's what this segment's about. So Matt's going to take – now, this isn't Raider-related today, but it is football-related. And so, Matt, take it away, brother.
You know, it's more than football-related. It's sports-related in general. I got into a discussion last night with a guy. Oh, did you see the Army-Navy game? And I'm aware of the Army-Navy game. It's not like I don't understand the tradition and the history, but I don't care. I don't care about that game because it's not on my radar whatsoever, other than the fact that it's a great rivalry and whatever else. And it got me to thinking about all of these quote unquote traditional sports rivalries that are out there, and how if you don't jump on board with these things, guys give you a sideways look, right? And I'm going to hit you with it with Notre Dame and USC. Why am I supposed to care about Notre Dame and USC if I'm not a fan of Notre Dame or USC? But because you like college football, you're supposed to care about that. I don't. I don't cheer for either team. I don't pay attention to either team. I don't care about that. Red Sox, Yankees. Let's go to baseball. Why should I care about two teams that play 5,000 miles away?
Giants, Dodgers. Who cares?
Only Giants and Dodgers fans, right? Are people in New York? Well, maybe New York because they both came from New York.
Yeah,
but are people from the East Coast supposed to care about that rivalry? It's happening on the opposite end of the country. Why is it so bad to not care about these big rivalries? Yeah, they were a big deal in the 60s and the 70s when there was 5 things to watch on TV over the course of an entire year, and Army-Navy was maybe the biggest thing ever, and the Rose Bowl was the biggest thing ever. And yeah, there's pageantry involved, and it's great visually, and maybe the game is good. But if you're not a fan of the team, do you really have to care to be a sports fan?
So 2 things. One is with Army-Navy, I'm going to put that aside just for a second because that's a case in its own, and I'll tell you why in a second. Like Notre Dame, USC, Michigan, Notre Dame, Michigan, Ohio State. Those games, of course, Matt, they matter more to the fans of those teams. No doubt about it. Just like for you, Dodgers-Giants, big rivalry. Yeah. I could care less. I hope they both lose 162 games. But you get it. It's the history. So one of the things with sports that I think people really appreciate and love is history. It is tradition. And while tradition can be dicey sometimes, there's traditions that need to go away, frankly, because they're either so aged or whatnot that you kind of look and say, well, that doesn't matter as much as anymore as it used to. I get that piece of it. With other traditions, though, it's about, like, when the Dodgers and Giants, as much as I don't like them, I would say those matter because of the things you mentioned. They matter because they both came from New York. They both relocated to the West Coast. They have such a long history. There's so many great moments in those games. So when the Dodgers play the Giants in a regular season game, do I care as much? No. If they were playing each other in the playoffs, to me it's a little more interesting. And I'm like, oh, that's a storied, traditional rivalry that has continued on the West Coast for obvious reasons, so it matters. Now, when it comes to football, and I'll get to Notre Dame USC later. But
I know how badly you want to get to Notre Dame, man.
Actually, more Army.
I think you're hurting right now because I said something bad about them.
No, because they won this year. It's all right. Why it matters with Army-Navy is a separate case, and I hope that when you listen to what I have to say about this, you change your mind about it and actually watch the game. Now, I've been to one of those games, number one. That's a separate issue. First of all,
before you go on, attending live,
different,
separate thing altogether, because
Absolutely.
there is nothing like a live sporting event, especially a
Correct.
big one. So I've been to the Rose Bowl. It's amazing.
Right.
But I don't care about the 2 teams playing ever.
But the difference with Army-Navy is in an era, and let's face it, and as much as I love college football, in an era where college football has become a de facto professional sport, okay, the players don't get paid. That is true. But it is a big money sport. Look at Alabama, okay? Look at the SEC. Look at the Big Ten. Look at the all these teams. You saw the Heisman Trophy. I have to watch for 2 hours them give the Heisman Trophy. That takes 3 minutes, right? Okay, it's a big money thing. The last pure college football game left in America is Army versus Navy. There is no money on the line. There is no guys going for pro contracts, sitting out of bowl games. There is no other thing other than sportsmanship, pride in school, and pride in being able to play football into college. That's the only thing that matters. So that's number one. Number two is when you look at that game as well, you're looking at two teams that play more than any other team you can argue for the name on the front of the jersey versus the name on the back, right?
True. I'll give you that.
Then also, have you ever heard if you see an Army veteran, he says "Go Army." Mm-hmm. That is for the football game, right? That's where it came from because there is 4 million people in the Army Navy combined. For those people, they didn't go to college. They might have grown up in college football territory, but that is their team, okay? Which is where the Notre Dame argument comes in because if you know the history of Notre Dame, working class Catholics who could never go to college, right, adopted that school because of their religion, and so that's why they had the Subway alumni in New York and that's why they play in New York.
Right.
But with Army versus Navy, it is the last pure game. Is it always the best game? No. Now, Army this year, top 25 team, and they're actually going to a bowl game. Amazing story about the turnaround there. But those kids, they recruit kids, but it's not like any other college football game, which is why, to me, it still matters.
Okay, that's great for the fans of those teams and all of that, but
are you a fan of the United States?
Yes.
Army versus Navy.
Yeah, but so I cheer for both teams?
You cheer for a good game?
Cheer for both teams?
Good game.
But that's the thing, it's shoved down everybody's throat like this is the most important thing out there. And I'll give you a perfect example, one that I know you're not going to care about. It's Duke UNC.
Oh, that's a big one. It's a big rivalry.
They act like
Absolutely.
Duke, but they act like that is the only game in college basketball that matters every single season. Yeah. Whenever they play, it becomes the biggest thing on earth. Yeah. Unless you're a Duke fan or a North Carolina fan, why are you supposed to care about that? And why are you less of a fan for not caring about that basketball game, no matter how big of a college basketball fan you may be? And I'm a big one. I don't care about that game. I can't stand Duke. If they lose, good. I don't care about that game. I'm not gonna sit down and rush to the TV and I can't wait to see Duke and UNC. I'm not from North Carolina. Those teams are 12 miles apart on the map. Yeah, I don't care.
I agree with you on that. I think that the tradition Army Navy and what they do, the student exchange where 7 people from each school go to each other's school for the next year, and it's much more about pride in country and those guys doing that. But I understand what you're saying. I just think that game is different. It's played on the weekend where there's no other college football. So from a tradition standpoint, very good. But good discussion, man. I love it. That was a good one. That was, I think, your best one because it was just fantastic.
Hey, Steelers in a shootout today. Steelers in a shootout. It's going to look like last week, but Steelers pull it out.
All right. Matt, thanks, brother. What a great show. Anyway, thanks to all of our guests and to all of you for watching and listening. Without you guys, we don't exist. We'll be back with you next week from 8 to 10 here on Silver and Black Today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m. Until next week, may the autumn wind always be at your back. We'll talk to you then. Bye-bye.